Hey everyone! Today we're going to look at Flatliners, the 1990 American psychological horror film.
Now you may be wondering who the fuck I am and where Strange Thoughts went.
What the F?
Don't worry, he's still around.
Yep, don't worry. I'll be abusing your speakers with my Why You Wouldn't Survive series soon. Didn't give a shit in the first place? Cool. Back to you, Jay.
Alright, now that's out of the way, let's get to it.
The film begins with a lot of religious imagery and intense music that's there to say, yes, this is a horror film, you clicked the right one. The first character we see is played by none other than Jack Bauer, Kiefer Sutherland. Staring into the morning sun, he delivers the line,
"Today's a good day to die."
We then cut to an emergency scene at a hospital where we see Kevin Bacon helping out in the emergency room. Damn, they really got an A-list cast for this one. Anyways, an overly confident med student, Kevin attempts to save a patient before the doctor arrives. Clearly against the rules, he has no idea what he's doing, and of course he gets yelled out of the operating room. Between shots of Kiefer sneaking around town in his duster, we meet a man played by Oliver Platt who is rambling into a recording device, the way that doctors love to do in movies. Next, we're in a hospital wing where out pops none other than Julia Roberts, who was actually hot at that time. If you still think that Julia Roberts is hot, let me know in the comments below so I can argue with you. Anyways, she's listening to patients tell her about their near-death experience. Julia loves death. In the next scene, med students are cutting into a cadaver's foot, and Billy Baldwin hits on Julia while they poke at a dead person's intestines. How romantic!
Are you dating anyone?
After the cadaver lab, Kiefer tries to convince all the homies to do some sort of experiment with him. They're all weirded out, but he employs classic peer pressure and tells Billy he's a pussy if he doesn't help out, so he's in. Suddenly, we see Kevin climbing out of his 4-story window. He's been kicked out of med school, no surprise there, and is leaving town. Nothing can convince this guy to stay. Oh, except for Keith and his weird experiment, which has something to do with death.
I don't want to die. I want to come back.
It's then we learn Kiefer's plan is to discover what happens after we die. He's assembled a team of the school's smartest med students to help him in this mission. Tonight is the night. Wait, is this right? The smartest students doing a death experiment. Idiots! While they're discussing the details, Billy is getting it on with a fellow med student on the second level of that weird church hospital. We see he's videotaping the action. Unfortunately, this is pre-Pornhub days with his super secret sex camera, which will also be used to record the experiment tonight. The gang is in the creepy place where Kiefer was sneaking around before, and they're clearly setting up for his death experiment. He gives the gang very detailed instructions on how to bring him back, and absolutely no one is taking notes. Keith concludes by handing him a letter which will absolve them of any responsibility if the experiment goes south. Now, I'm no lawyer, but this feels legally dubious considering they're all med students. The procedure begins, and Billy captures the moment on his video camera. Really hope you put in fresh tape. Oliver Platt, hitherto known as Freak Out Guy, starts freaking out. After Kiefer flatlines, we see into his DMT trip, which is basically the Soarin' ride at Epcot with a kid chasing a dog through a field. But the team successfully brings him back, and he is, surprisingly, alive and well. They debrief about the experience, and Kiefer sounds like every bro who's ever tried to explain mushrooms. He claims he can hear and feel the hum of the streetlights, bro. Whatever, Keith. The gang starts to discuss each of them taking a turn to flatline, with Kevin still skeptical. Keith really saw anything. During this discussion, they left Kiefer alone, and he is freaking out more than Freak Out Guy, probably because he can now see sound. During the panic attack, a dog in pain crawls towards him, with it eventually vanishing. Now, as Julia watches over Kiefer, he has a vision similar to his flatline experience, but this time it ends up with him falling out of a tree. Back at Billy's weird church hospital apartment, he sifts through a cabinet full of Ron Jeremy tapes and romantically chooses to watch the one of his engagement party. Calls up his fiancée and talks about death. Now suddenly we're in someone's black and white vision of being born, but the vision turns very sexual, which makes sense when it's revealed Billy is the one now flatlining. A dude never stops thinking about sex. Man's gotta eat. The team then debrief on Billy's flatline at a completely empty diner where Billy is now the mushroom bro. He describes his visions as erotic, but in a friendly way, whatever that means. Kevin, the resident atheist and all-around douche, claims that this is all BS. This prompts the group to dare him to go next. Didn't see that one coming! Julie and Kevin then have a very confusing argument where he starts off being against the idea and, being the gentleman that he is, decides that he wants to bump Julie in line. Meanwhile, Kiefer asks Billy if there was anything negative about his experience. Billy says no, and Kiefer pulls a, "Oh yeah, same. Totally, me neither, bro." Even though we know he's thinking about that crippled dog. Kiefer decides to take a walk by himself and strolls past some sketchy characters, which definitely helps his paranoia.
In the end, we all know what we've done.
He sees his dog vision again, and this time decides to pursue it through what looks like an understaffed haunted house. He then comes upon a young child who proceeds to beat the crap out of him.
What are you doing here? You lost?
Pussy! Next, we see Billy approaching a young woman on campus. He asks her if she's had a near-death experience, and she reluctantly starts sharing details. The conversation is 50% him trying to pick her up and 50% him indulging his new death cult interests. While they're talking, Billy starts to have vision of the women from his videos. Not those kind of visions. Get your head out of the gutter, guys. But they're asking him, "Why'd you do this to me, Joe?" Kiefer gave himself some stitches after his run-in with the little Muay Thai dude, and despite ready access to medical supplies, he did it without numbing his face. These are seriously the dumbest med students ever. The latest in an ever-increasing number of spooky sounds triggers another bout of intense paranoia, and this sends him running from his dorm, even though it's just a trick-or-treater. Oh, yeah, by the way, it's Halloween. The A-team begins setting up for the next temporary death, and Freakout Guy questions whether it's smart to do this on Halloween. Like, what a knob. The team questions Kiefer about his injuries, and he lies, embarrassed about getting beaten up by a little kid. Kevy Poo is getting hooked up to the death apparatus, and Billy is wearing a skeleton costume. Very festive, Billy. Yay. Now Kevin begins to see visions, first of his past, and then suddenly we are on a mountain, and we never really learn why.
It makes no sense at all.
Back in the room, everyone's panicking. Kiefer wants him to go longer than they agreed to, Billy's losing his mind, and Freakout Guy is doing his thing. Kevin sees more flashbacks of his childhood, with one girl in particular standing out, and finally they bring him back. But during the debrief, Kevin says he's still skeptical about the God stuff, and shocker, that the experience is hard to verbalize. They all argue about who's gonna go next and how long to go for, and Kiefer gets mad because this was all his idea and they're all just tourists in his experience. After being a jerk to everyone, Kiefer is back in his apartment and gets full-on attacked by the kid again, loogies and all. Kevy Wevy Poo wakes up after being watched over by Julia, who is apparently a live-in nurse for the squad. He tries to talk her out of flatlining, but she says it's the only way she can know her deceased father has gone to a good place. Julia's next seen at her hospital shift, where she's talking to an old woman banging down death's door. Kevin's going on about his day when he sees a vision of the little girl he saw during his flatline. She starts taunting him and begins by calling him fellatio. Seriously, the best insult I've ever heard. I need to start using that. Hey, fellatio, what are you doing?
Needle dick, cockbite, jag off, chip bird, bird, turd, face, round nose, macho wimp, limp dick, what's the matter, gonna cry? Shit face, rat turd, ass licking son of a bitch.
Yeah, my man's gonna need a good cry after that verbal beating. Eventually he snaps out of it, revealing it was all just a daydream. Or was it? The gang's back in the death room and Julia's preparing for her turn. Kevy Poo shows up late and demands that they bring her back. There's a lot of confusion over whether or not they're following his lead or Kiefer's, and it really comes down to who says the Nike tagline better.
Just do it!
While the group begins the process of bringing her out, Julia begins to see visions of her family, especially of her dad, who is in the armed forces. The visions take a dark turn and we see her dad brooding in the bathroom. There's a tambourine, a lot of yelling, and a mom saying it's Julia's fault. Eventually, we see he shot himself. The team struggle to bring Julia back when the power in their ultra-modern lab goes out, but not to worry, the defib has a battery.
Joe, the battery, you charged it, right?
Nah, too busy making another sex tape with some ghost hookers. Right as she's about to be dead, they bring her back. Kevin and Kiefer have a hushed conversation where Kevin explains he's being haunted by a little girl he bullied in elementary school, and he thinks it's due to his flatlining experience. This is why he wanted to stop the procedure. This prompts Billy to share his demons, which turn out to be the women he secretly taped with his totally not obvious camera. Kiefer is the last to share what's haunting him.
I think his name's Billy Mahoney. He's an 8-year-old kid we used to pick on in school.
Captain Obvious Kiefer states, well, the obvious, saying all of their sins must be coming back to haunt them. He suspected this after his flatline, but didn't tell anyone as he wanted more proof. Understandably, they're all pretty pissed at Kiefer for withholding this info, but he pulls the "for the greater good" playing card, and they're all forced to back down. Meanwhile, Julia has another vision of her bloody pops, but keeps this a secret. Kevin, suspicious she's still having visions, tells the rest of the group he thinks she's hiding something. Kiefer's waiting for Billy the Kid, armed with a screwdriver. Really, Kiefer? A screwdriver? It's the best you can do against... Oh, idiot. He has another vision of tormenting the kid, and when he comes to, the kid knocks him out. Julia leaves Kevin to go see the old dying woman, but when she gets there, turns out she died, which makes Julia upset, even though that was literally her advice.
Put up a great fight. Sometimes we just have to let go.
Kevin reflects on when he tormented the little girl, while elsewhere Billy is being followed by women. They taunt him with the lines he fed them before his secret film sessions. My pants are tightening at the thought.
Are you a model? You could be. Hey, gorgeous.
I'll call you, I promise.
We can stop whenever you want. It'll only make our relationship better.
I've never felt like this.
Now, if that's what being haunted by demons looks like, I think I'd be okay with it.
I need you to show.
He then sees his fiancée, and it's actually her. She came to see him because she was worried by all his death talk. She looks distraught because, shocker, she found his sex tapes. Storming off, she leaves Billy to reflect on his sins. Kevin decides to track down the girl from his visions, who we learn is named Winnie. He is given an address and is about to leave when Kiefer shows up, having been beat the hell up yet again. Kiefer asks to join Kevin on his quest as
I don't want to be alone.
amidst a sea of open cadavers, the other three are taking a practical exam. Julia touches her face with stomach juice and recoils in fear as her dead body becomes her dad. She runs off and Billy, grown-up Billy, pursues. Kevin and Kiefer have made it to Winnie's house. She invites him in and at first does not want to hear his apology since she would rather not think about that time in her life. But eventually she opens up and they have a lovely moment.
David? Thank you.
Are you sure?
Thanks.
That day, Winnie and I promised each other that no matter what, that we'd always be together.
To be ruined by Kiefer having a full PCP freak out back in the car. We see Kid Billy attacking him with a gardening tool, but when Kevin approaches, we see from his perspective that it's just Kiefer and the tool. Jack Bauer's really having a tough time. Kevin theorizes that everyone should do what he did and make amends. Back at home base, Julia opens up to Kevin about her dad killing himself and how she feels responsible. Kevin consoles her and says it wasn't her fault. He urges her to get closure as her dad probably wants her to let go. Meanwhile, Kiefer takes Billy and the freakout dude to a graveyard, and as they approach, he proclaims this is where Billy lives. A drunk Keith explains how Billy fell off a tree due to Kiefer's bullying. Also, his dog died in the same incident. Really bad day for Keith. He thinks he can still make amends, so he ditches them in the graveyard. Daddy's girl starts to see a vision of her dad again. She talks with her dad, he apologizes, and they hug. Kevin arrives at the graveyard and two meat men fill him in on the whole Billy Mahoney deal. They suspect that Keith is trying to flatline without them. Independently, Julia talks to Kiefer on the phone and comes to the same conclusion.
Isn't it funny? You hear a phone ring and it could be anybody. But a ringing phone has to be answered, doesn't it?
No.
Cue the search and rescue mission. Kiefer, being the genius that he is doing the procedure on his own and successfully flatlines. The team arrives and struggles to bring him back, and in Kiefer's vision, he's now the one falling out of the tree as Billy taunts him. In a sequence that cuts between the team trying to revive Keith and Keith's vision, we see Keith finally making amends with Billy. Billy slowly removes his hoodie and cracks a creepy smile that is pretty tough to interpret. Keith takes it as a sign that, yeah, they're all good and returns to the land of the living. Upon waking up, mumbles into Kevin's ear. I bet it was something profound.
You said it wasn't such a good day to die.
Yep, cheesy, lame, I know, but hey, I'm not gonna set the bar high for some guy who's died twice this week. And this is where the summary comes to an end. If you like these types of videos, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And be sure to flame me in the comments. This is my first time doing these videos. Hope you didn't hate me too much. Anyways, guys, this is Jay from Strange Thoughts, signing off. Peace!